Sleeping in minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit without shelter should kill you within hours. Your extremities freeze first. Frostbite sets in at 15 minutes. Your core temperature drops. Hypothermia shuts down your organs one by one. Yet mountain men survived entire winters in blizzards with nothing but animal hides and fire. No Gore-Tex, no synthetic insulation, no modern survival gear. They spent weeks in conditions that would kill a modern hiker in one night. What did they know that we've forgotten? Here's the thing about extreme cold survival. These weren't lucky accidents. Mountain men had a system, a brutal, tested system born from necessity, and it worked. Here's the thing about minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Most people think extreme cold is just regular cold turned up. Wrong. At 40 below, the air becomes a different substance entirely. A hostile element that actively hunts your body heat. Every breath you take pulls warmth straight out of your lungs. Roughly 400 BTUs per hour just from breathing. Your skin radiates heat through three mechanisms simultaneously: radiation, convection, and conduction, each one working overtime to kill you. The math is brutal. A resting human body produces about 100 watts of heat. At minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, you lose heat at a rate of 300 to 400 watts. You're running a deficit of 200 to 300 watts every single hour. That's like trying to fill a bathtub while someone's draining it 3 times faster. Within 2 hours, your core temperature drops below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Hypothermia. Within 4 hours, you're unconscious. Within 6, you're dead. So what did mountain men do first? They built what they called a long fire. Not a campfire, a long fire. Completely different animal. Picture a trench about 8 feet long and 2 feet wide. Fill it with logs laid parallel, not stacked. The entire structure burns as one continuous heat source. A wall of flame instead of a point source. This matters more than you'd think. A standard campfire radiates heat in all directions. Most of that warmth shoots straight up into the sky, wasted. A long fire creates a horizontal thermal plane. Heat radiates outward at ground level, where your body actually is. Mountain men would lie parallel to this fire trench, sometimes just 3 feet away, close enough to feel uncomfortable. That discomfort kept them alive. The science here is radiant heat transfer. Your body absorbs infrared radiation from the flame. This bypasses air temperature entirely. You're not warming the air and then warming yourself. You're catching photons directly from the combustion. At 3 feet from a proper long fire, you're receiving roughly 800 to 1,000 watts of radiant heat. That's double what your body loses. You're finally running a surplus. But here's where it gets clever. Mountain men didn't just lie there. They built reflectors using whatever they had. Large, flat rocks positioned behind them. Fallen logs, even snowbanks packed and shaped. These surfaces caught the heat radiating away from their backs and bounced it right back. Suddenly you're being heated from 2 directions. The fire in front, the reflected warmth behind. Some trappers reported sleeping comfortably at minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit using this exact setup. Historical accounts from the 1820s describe this technique in detail. One fur trader wrote about spending an entire January in the Rockies using nothing but long fires and rock reflectors. He calculated he burned through roughly 60 pounds of wood per night. That's about 1 log every hour and a half. Labor intensive, absolutely, but cheaper than dying. Now, fuel becomes the critical resource. At minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, green wood won't burn hot enough. You need seasoned hardwood, dead standing trees. Mountain men learned to identify these from a distance. They'd look for bark that had already fallen off. Check for woodpecker holes. Signs the interior had dried out. A single dead lodgepole pine could provide 2 nights of heat if managed correctly. And management matters. You don't let a long fire burn wild. You feed it continuously through the night. Add 1 log every 90 minutes. Keep the flame height consistent. Let it burn too hot and you waste fuel. Let it die down and you lose the thermal plane. Experienced mountain men developed an internal clock for this. They'd wake naturally every hour and a half. Add fuel. Check for embers spreading beyond the trench. Go back to sleep. Pretty ingenious, right? But the long fire method has a fatal flaw: moisture. When you sleep next to an open flame in extreme cold, you're creating a temperature differential of 200 degrees Fahrenheit or more between your front and back. Your front side sweats from the heat. Your back side freezes from the cold. That sweat condenses, freezes in your clothing. By morning, you're wearing an ice shell, and wet insulation loses 90% of its warming capacity. One trapper's journal from 1834 describes waking up to find his buffalo robe frozen solid against his back. He had to thaw it by the fire before he could move. The moisture from his body had condensed, run down his spine, and turned to ice. He wrote that it felt like sleeping with a frozen door strapped to his shoulders. Not ideal, so mountain men adapted. They started sleeping in shifts. 2 men would share a long fire. One would stay semi-conscious, managing the flame, rotating his body like a rotisserie chicken. Every 15 minutes, turn. Keep the heat exposure even. Prevent sweat buildup. The other man could sleep deeply, knowing his partner was preventing the ice shell situation. This is where survival stops being about one clever trick. It becomes a system: fire management plus moisture control, plus partnership plus fuel strategy. Miss any one element and you're dead by dawn. But fire can only do so much when your body isn't producing enough heat on its own. Here's the thing about metabolism at extreme cold. Your digestive system is a furnace, and mountain men learn to stoke it strategically. About 2 hours before settling in for the night, experienced trappers would eat pure fat. Not protein, not carbohydrates, fat, bare grease straight from the pot. Chunks of tallow, beaver tail meat, which is almost 80% fat. Sounds disgusting, right? But there's real science behind it. Digesting fat requires massive metabolic effort. Your body has to break down complex lipid chains. This process generates heat through something called diet-induced thermogenesis. For every 100 calories of fat you eat, your body burns about 15 to 20 calories just processing it. That's heat production that lasts 6 to 8 hours, enough to get you through the coldest part of the night. Mountain men time this perfectly. They'd eat their fat ration at dusk. Peak heat production would hit around 2 or 3 a.m., exactly when temperatures dropped lowest, when hypothermia sneaks up on sleeping people. Strategic fuel loading for the metabolic furnace. But what about alcohol? Whiskey was a staple in mountain camps. Surely that helped, right? Worst mistake you can make. Alcohol dilates your blood vessels, brings warm blood rushing to your skin surface. Feels amazing for about 20 minutes. Then you're radiating heat into the frozen air like a broken radiator. Your core temperature plummets. People died thinking whiskey would save them. Historical records from the fur trade era document at least 47 trappers who froze to death with liquor in their systems. They felt warm while their organs shut down. Smart mountain men avoided alcohol entirely after sunset. They saved it for emergencies, specifically for treating frostbite. Rubbing whiskey on frozen tissue could help restore circulation if caught early enough. But drinking it, that's how you die warm. Now, let's talk about what you actually wear at minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Modern survival guides tell you to layer synthetic fabrics, create dead air spaces. Mountain men figured this out 200 years ago using animal products. The principle is simple. Trapped air is the best insulator on Earth, but only if it stays still. Moving air steals heat, so you need materials that create thousands of tiny air pockets. Materials like beaver fur. A beaver pelt has roughly 23,000 hairs per square centimeter. Each hair traps a microscopic bubble of air. When you wear beaver fur against your skin, you're essentially wrapping yourself in millions of tiny thermoses. The insulation value is remarkable. One beaver fur shirt provides the same warmth as 3 modern fleece layers, and it weighs half as much. But here's the clever part. Mountain men didn't wear one thick layer. They wore multiple thin layers of different furs. Beaver closest to the skin for its density. Buffalo robe on the outside for wind protection and durability. Deer hide in between for flexibility. Each layer created its own air gap. 3 separate thermal barriers instead of 1. The total air gap depth across all layers measured about 2 to 3 inches. That's 2 to 3 inches of dead, so trapped air between your skin and the wind. At minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, with a 20 miles per hour wind, this layering system could maintain a microclimate of 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit next to your body. Not comfortable, but survivable. And they never tucked anything in. Everything hung loose. Tucking shirts into pants or cinching belts tight crushes the air pockets, compresses the insulation. Veteran trappers wore everything baggy. They looked like they were wearing clothes 3 sizes too large. That was the point. Here's where location strategy starts mattering. You can have perfect fire technique and ideal clothing, but if you're camped in the wrong spot, you're dead anyway. Mountain men never camped on ridgelines. Wind speed increases 40% for every 1,000 feet of elevation above the valley floor. That wind strips away heat faster than you can produce it. Even a 10 miles per hour breeze at minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit creates a wind chill equivalent to minus 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Exposed skin freezes in under 3 minutes at that temperature. They descend into valleys. Look for dense timber stands. Ideally spruce or fir groves. These trees create natural windbreaks. Studies of historical camping sites show mountain men consistently chose locations with at least 70% canopy cover. The trees absorbed and redirected wind currents, created pockets of relatively still air, but valleys have their own danger. Cold air is heavy. It sinks and pools at the lowest elevations. The valley floor can be 15 to 20 degrees colder than a spot just 50 feet upslope. So experienced trappers would camp on benches, those flat spots about 1/3 of the way up the valley wall, high enough to avoid the cold pool, low enough to stay out of the wind. Goldilocks positioning. Rock faces and cliff walls served as thermal batteries. During daylight, even weak winter sun warms exposed rock. That heat radiates slowly through the night. Camp with a rock wall at your back, and you're essentially cuddling a giant radiator. Some trappers reported measurable warmth from certain cliff faces even at midnight. Then there's the moisture problem nobody talks about. Even with perfect fire placement and ideal clothing, you're fighting a war against water vapor. Every breath you exhale contains moisture. At minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, that moisture freezes instantly on contact with any cold surface. Your beard becomes ice. Your sleeping furs accumulate frost from the inside. By morning, everything you own is encased in a brittle shell. Mountain men developed a technique they called frost shaking. Every 2 hours through the night, they'd wake up and vigorously shake their buffalo robes. The accumulated frost would break off in sheets, fall away before it could melt against body heat and soak the fur. Sounds simple, works incredibly well. Some trappers took this further. They'd hang their outer robes on nearby branches during warming sessions by the fire. Let the heat drive moisture out without getting the fur wet. Then they'd put the dried robe back on before sleeping. This cycle of drying and wearing kept the insulation effective. Wet fur loses 75% of its warming capacity. Dry fur maintains full performance, but even the best materials and fire strategy mean nothing if you're alone. Here's the thing about surviving extreme cold. Nobody does it solo, not for long. Partnership survival was standard practice. And 2 men shared one long fire, shared one shelter area. The math is straightforward. 2 human bodies produce 200 watts of heat instead of 100. In a confined space, that's the difference between marginal survival and relative comfort. But it's more than just warmth. One person stays semi-conscious through the night, manages the fire, monitors for dangers, watches for signs their partner is slipping into hypothermia. The buddy system served as a biological alarm clock and safety net combined. Mountain men developed hand signals for checking consciousness in the dark, a squeeze on the shoulder, an expected response. If your partner didn't squeeze back, you knew something was wrong. Time to add wood to the fire. Time to force them to move. Get blood circulating again. These small protocols saved lives. Dogs played a role too. A large dog produces about 60 watts of body heat. That's like having a small space heater that also alerts you to predators. Many trappers would sandwich themselves between the fire and their dog at night, getting heat from both directions. The dog's fur provided additional insulation, and honestly, the psychological comfort of another heartbeat nearby mattered more than people admitted. Historical records show survival rates for paired trappers were 87% higher than solo trappers during extreme cold events. The Hudson's Bay Company eventually made it policy. No trapper worked alone during winter months. Too many men died because there was nobody to notice when they stopped shivering. Because here's what most people don't know: when you stop shivering in the cold, you're not warming up. You're in serious trouble. White shivering is your body fighting back, generating heat through muscle contractions. When that stops, your core temperature has dropped below the point where your body can mount a defense. You've got maybe 30 minutes before you lose consciousness. Experienced mountain men recognized this instantly. They'd force movement, make their partner do jumping jacks, eat emergency fat rations, restart the metabolic furnace before it was too late. Solo trappers had nobody watching for this warning sign. They'd just drift off thinking they'd finally gotten warm enough to sleep comfortably. So what did mountain men know? It was long fires and fat-burning metabolism and layered air gaps. It was rock wall thermal mass and valley bench positioning and frost-shaking protocols. It was partnership sleeping and dog companionship and watching for the moment shivering stopped. They understood something fundamental. Extreme cold survival isn't about one brilliant hack. It's about interlocking systems, each element supporting the others. These weren't lucky tough guys who just endured more pain. They were engineers, problem solvers who refined techniques through brutal trial and error. And frankly, that's more impressive than toughness. Anyone can suffer. Not everyone can think clearly enough to solve the problem while they're suffering. Modern mountaineers still use variations of these methods. The long fire technique appears in wilderness survival manuals under different names. Military cold weather training teaches the layering principles mountain men figured out with animal furs. The knowledge didn't disappear. It just got translated into new materials and contexts, but the core wisdom remains. At minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, you can't fight the cold directly. You can't overpower it with willpower or modern gear alone. You have to outsmart it, use physics, understand heat transfer, work with a partner, stay conscious of your body's warning signals, respect the environment enough to adapt to it instead of trying to dominate it. That's what those men knew. And that knowledge, refined over generations, is why they survived conditions that would kill most modern people in a single night.